Hi, and welcome back to another UmattR TV episode. I'm your host, Elizabeth Flores. I go to Bloomfield High School.
My name is Liam Beckstead, and I go to Kirtland Central High School.
I'm Jaden Johnson, and I go to FHS.
And we are really excited to welcome a special guest, Mr. T. Greg from Merrion Oil Gas. Hi.
Hi.
So Mr. Merrion, can you tell us what you do?
Well, I am the president of Merrion Oil Gas. Merrion Oil Gas is a 60-year-old family-owned oil and gas company. My dad started the company, and then I took over from him in 1992, so 28 years ago. And my son Ryan now works at the company as well, so we're a third generation family-owned company. And as I was telling Jaden a little earlier, we operate 120 oil and gas wells. Most of those are located here in the San Juan Basin of New Mexico, and we've also got wells that we operate in Colorado and Wyoming.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us what oil and gas does for this community, but also just in general as well, the importance of it?
Well, yes, I'm happy to do that. So, you know, a lot of times when I talk to people about oil and gas, I have them look around and I say, is there anything that you can see in this room that wasn't either made directly from or manufactured using or transported here without oil and gas? I mean, can you see anything that...
There's nothing.
Right. Right, and so that's how important oil and gas is to our lives, and yet most people don't think about that, and they don't realize how important it is. So we need it, you know, for everything. But beyond that, it creates a lot of very, very good jobs for people in our community as well as our state. And about a third of New Mexico's budget is paid for because of the revenues that are generated in the oil and gas industry. So we have between a $6 and $7 billion a year state budget. And about a third of that comes from oil and gas. So it's very, very important to the state of New Mexico.
Yeah.
It helps run our state. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank
you. Good answer.
So I have a little bit of a hot topic for you about fracking. Can you kind of explain to us what that is and like how it relates to the gas and oil industry?
Yeah. So fracking is short for hydraulic fracturing. And a standard procedure, every time we drill a well, once the well is drilled and pipe is run and cemented in the well, then we shoot holes in the pipe across from the formation that contains the oil or gas. And after we perforate the pipe, then we move in equipment so that we can hydraulically fracture the well. And what we do is we pump water and sand down the well and into the perforations, and we pump that sand-laden fluid into the formation faster than the formation can take it, and it cracks the formation open at depth. And the water and sand go into the fracture that opens up, and then when we quit pumping, the earth wants to close back up, but it can't close completely because the sand that we've pumped into the crack keeps the crack propped open. And that is what's known as a hydraulic fracture. Almost every well that's drilled has to be hydraulically fractured to be able to economically produce oil and gas from the well. Most people don't realize that the oil and gas is trapped in very, very tiny little pore spaces within the rock. And so it's not like we're drilling into just a big cavern. It's locked in the tiny pore spaces of the rock, and the hydraulic fracture creates like a superhighway for the oil and gas to migrate from the rock into the fracture, and then back to the wellbore, and then up and out of the wellbore, and eventually to market. And so fracking, which is the shortened version for it, for some reason has gotten a bad name from the media primarily, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about fracking. I'm here to tell you that it's actually the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's very, very
yeah, it must be pretty good then.
It's very, very important to the oil and gas industry. We would not be able to produce oil and gas if we were not able to hydraulically frack a well as part of our standard operating procedure. And the misinformation that's out there is that somehow these fractures that we create somehow connect to fresh water and contaminate fresh water. And that's absolutely not the case. Under the Obama administration, the EPA did a multi-year, very investigative study of fracturing, and was not able to find, to be honest with you, I don't know that there's a single documented case where a fracture has ever broken into fresh water and contaminated it. And so that's how rare it is. And so we go about our business very, very carefully and responsibly. And so I know it's gotten a bad name, but it's unwarranted.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I learned something new today.
Yeah.
Can you tell us anything about the financial link between the oil and gas revenue and education in our community?
Yes. So a long time ago, the state of New Mexico realized that the resource that we are so blessed to have, the oil and gas resources that we're so blessed to have, is a finite resource. And it's a non-renewable, finite resource, which means once we produce the oil and gas that we have here that exists below the surface of the earth here in New Mexico, once we produce it all, it's gone forever. and all the benefits that we derive from the production of oil and gas is gone forever as well. And so they decided that the royalties that are being paid to the state of New Mexico, because whenever we drill and produce oil and gas wells on either federal or state lands, the royalties go to the state of New Mexico. 100% of the royalties on state lands go to the state, and about half of the federal royalties go to the state, along with lease bonuses and some other revenue. They decided to put all of that money into a permanent fund, and then use the interest off of that permanent fund, the earnings off that permanent fund, to pay for all of the public education that we enjoy here in the state of New Mexico. And so that permanent fund now has built up to it's in the tens of billions of dollars is how big the permanent fund is. And so the earnings off that permanent fund each year go to pay for public education here, and will continue to do so forever, I guess, for a long time, even after all the oil and gas is produced.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who are talking about shutting down oil and gas, that we don't need it. So if that were to happen, would the education system suffer from that? Like the resources?
It would be because of the permanent fund that's been established. The earnings off that permanent fund would continue to be able to pay for our education by design, but all the additional royalties that go into that permanent fund each year from our industry would dry up if our industry all of a sudden could not produce oil and gas. All the wonderful jobs that are created would dry up. A lot of the other revenue that goes to the state would dry up, and so it would have a negative impact not only on education but on many aspects of our way of life here in New Mexico.
And I feel like that would probably transfer over into a lot of other states as well because of the
Well,
use of
not
oil
only a
and gas.
lot of other states, but you know, I shared with you earlier that everything that in our life depends on oil and gas. It's either made directly from oil and gas, or manufactured using oil and gas, or transported to where it needs to go using oil and gas. And so there's a component in the cost of everything that's tied to the price of oil and gas. And so if all of a sudden you start decreasing the supply of oil and gas, the demand for oil and gas isn't going to change. It's going to continue to be there and continue to increase as time goes on. And so what that means economic-wise is the price of oil and gas will increase, which means the price of everything is going to increase.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very important aspect of our lives, of our economy, and now we need to continue to produce oil and gas responsibly, which we do, in spite of some of the things you might hear. But we are a very, very heavily regulated industry, and we continue to be more regulated as time goes on, and so we follow those regulations very, very carefully. We produce the oil and gas very, very responsibly, and as we move down the road, we need to move into using other forms of energy responsibly and carefully as well, and not just do so with a knee-jerk kind of reaction, because that could cause a lot of problems.
So now that we're on that topic, could you kind of talk to us a little bit about like renewable energy and its like place, since it's kind of like a new thing, like in the energy area?
So if you looked at a pie chart of the energy that we use every day, about 80% of the pie chart would be from fossil fuels. That's how important fossil fuels are. So oil, gas, and coal are considered the fossil fuels. So 4/5 of all the energy we use every day comes from those fossil fuels. And then the rest of it comes, a big chunk of it comes from nuclear, about 8% or so. And then when we get down to the renewables, you have solar, and about, I believe it's maybe 1 or 2% of the energy we use every day comes from solar. And then we have wind, and a couple of percent comes from wind. And so renewables do play a role in the energy picture, but it's a very, very small role. And they're more of a supplemental energy than they are of an alternative to the energy that we use every day. And part of the reason is because renewable energies, once the energy is produced, you've got to somehow figure out a way to store it. And that's, you either use it or you need to store it. And that's challenging right now. We don't have the solution to storing large volumes of renewably created energy yet. And but we use a lot of renewable energy in the oil and gas industry where it makes sense. We've got almost every single one of our wells has a solar panel on it, and the solar panel keeps the batteries charged on our telemetry systems. And so the information that comes into our office from the well sites that tells us the rates and pressures and temperatures that our wells are producing at all comes in via this telemetry, and it's all run off of solar. And so there's absolutely, and we're moving towards generating more and more electricity using solar and using wind. It's not what's known as the base load for generating electricity, because the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time, and so you know they have to supplement the electricity that's being generated using coal and natural gas. Coal and natural gas and nuclear are the energies that form the base load of most electrical power plants. And so, that's kind of how renewable energy fits into the picture. And as we move into the future, because of a lot of policies that are in place, we're going to, move toward trying to generate more and more electricity using renewables, and that'll force us to learn how to store the energy a little bit better, and that type of thing.
So I do have to ask, what's
Okay.
the probability of our nation, world, whatever, moving to 100% renewable energy within the next 20 years to 50 years to 100 years? Is that even plausible?
It's not plausible in the next 20 years. If you really wanted to go there, the way to do it would be to really lean on nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
Nuclear energy is very clean burning. It's a pretty efficient way to generate electricity. And over the years, it's gotten safer and safer and safer. And
See, but the problem there lies that you can't build a nuclear plant without using oil and gas resources.
well, you need oil and gas resources to.
Regardless.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
going to need oil and gas resources. And that's the other thing about renewables. Even with renewables, with the wind and the solar, the wind and the solars, were manufactured using oil and gas. They're maintained, using oil and gas. They were transported to wherever they'd been installed using oil and gas. And so there's always that component of oil and gas. And so, as a practical matter, I haven't seen any projections where we can completely move away from the fossil fuels. And we love energy. Energy, we use energy to do work for us. And so when you look at the most productive countries in the world, those are the countries that use the most energy. The countries that have the highest gross domestic product, which is a measure of the productivity of the country, are the countries that use the most energy. And the countries that use the most energy are the countries that enjoy the highest quality of life, and have the cleanest environments in which to live in, because it's the energy that's available that helps us keep our environment clean. And so it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you touch base on how oil and gas industry relates to STEM, so the science, technology, engineering, and math?
Yes. So when I was in high school, I was trying to decide where to go to college, and I had not applied to any colleges, and it was Thanksgiving, and my dad asked me how many colleges I had applied to, and I said I hadn't applied to any. And he said, well, what do you want to study once you get out of high school? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, you need to figure it out. And he said, I want you to think about it over this long holiday weekend. It was Thanksgiving. And on Sunday night, you and I are going to sit down and we'll visit about it. And so I spent that whole weekend taking some long walks and doing a lot of soul searching. And on Sunday night, I sat down with my dad, and he said, what'd you come up with? And I said, well, I came up with three things that I might want to be. And he said, all right, let's hear them. And I said, well, I really like golf. I was on the Farmington High golf team when I was in high school. And I loved competitive golf. And I said, so I might want to be a pro golfer. And I said, and I also really like art, and I like humor. And so I thought maybe combining those two things and being a cartoonist would be a neat
That'd be cool.
thing. Yeah. And then I said, and then third, math is my favorite subject in school, so maybe I would want to be a mathematician. And my dad said, you know, to make any kind of a living at golf, you've got to be the best in the world. Mm-hmm. Out of the 7 billion people in the world, you need to somehow be better than everybody else. And there's only a handful of people that can make any kind of a living at playing golf. And the same goes for being a cartoonist. You know, only a handful of people make the funny pages in the newspaper. And so very, very challenging career path. He said, but because you enjoy those things, you can always continue to do them as a hobby. And he said, as far as math goes, he said, what I would suggest you do is if you use math to solve real-world problems, then there's all kinds of job opportunities, and people that use math to solve real-world problems are called engineers. And he said, so I think what you need to do is find a good engineering college to go to and study engineering and continue to enjoy golf and art and humor as hobbies. And so that's what I ultimately did. There's more to the story. After my sophomore year at Colorado School of Mines, I went home and I told my dad, I'm pretty sure I should have been either a golfer or a cartoonist because I'm having a hard time at engineering school. But it turns out that I actually went and took an aptitude test, and my aptitudes did lie along the lines of engineering, and so I ultimately graduated from Colorado School of Mines became an engineer. But so STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yes, sir.
Is that
Pretty
right?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. But all of those things, and are required to know and understand to ultimately become an engineer, and be able to use those resources to solve the real world problems that we face every day in the oil and gas industry. That's a long answer to that question, but did I answer it?
Yes, I think
Okay.
you did.
Okay.
Very important.
Okay.
So to kind of wrap this up, so we've noticed that Merrion Oil and Gas and the Merrion Foundation donates quite a bit to this community. And so I was just curious what your philosophy or what your stance on giving back is.
Well, I shared earlier that we've been in this community for 60 years. That's how long ago my dad risked everything to drill the first well. The first well he drilled was named the Edna #1 after his mom. And that's what started the company. And the Edna #1 was fracked 60 years ago.
Oh, wow.
That's how long fracking has been around and how long we've been doing it, even though it's only become popular to talk about recently for some reason. But we love this community, and we want to see this community do well. And this community's been awful good to us, and we want to be good to our community. And we love being able to give back to the community and to make a difference in the community. We really like to do what we can to try to get at the root cause of a lot of the problems that we see in society. And so we try as best we can to help people help themselves. It goes back to that philosophy, feed a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. And so we we think that this UmattR program is a wonderful program. What you're doing right here, right now, is wonderful to be able to talk to people like myself and ask them these great questions you've been asking. I wish everybody would ask me questions like this and give me a chance to share with them, my thoughts on these important subjects.
Yeah.
And so we've been given to UmattR since it began. My daughter Sammy and my daughter Tori both went through UmattR. My niece Molly was in UmattR, and even Eliza. was going to go through UMattR. She is going through UMattR?
She is.
Okay, okay. I didn't know. But anyway, and so we love giving to education. We love to support education, which educates people and allows them to go out in the world and use that education to make a difference, to find a job and to make a difference.
Absolutely.
We love supporting economic development activities which create jobs so people can find jobs to make a good living for their families. And even beyond that, you know, we give to a lot of the social services and other important organizations that, you know, make a difference here in our community. So, yeah, it's pretty important to give back to your community. There's just a lot of things that need to be done and need to be addressed, and they need donations from companies like ours to move forward. So those are my thoughts on that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to make it known that we really appreciate your support throughout the years, and we really appreciate you giving your time to be with us here today. So thank
I
you.
loved it. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much.
What a wonderful thing.
It was
Yeah.
really, really cool.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for supporting us. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact us. We are always here for you guys. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Yes, sir.